Hello and welcome to Let's Review. This week we have a first for this show. Have you decided to put in some actual effort? Oh god, no. No, for the first time in the history of Let's Review, I didn't pay for my copy of Data Hacker Reboot because I was sent a free copy by the developers, New Reality Games, because they wanted my take on it in the form of a formal review. This has never happened to me before, and if you feel that accepting a free reviewer copy compromises my integrity, fair enough. All I can really do is promise that I will be as impartial as ever, and I will give you my honest opinions on the game. So, that brings up the obvious question, is Data Hacker Reboot actually any good as a game? Well, to answer that, we start as we always do, with the gameplay. The gameplay of Data Hacker Reboot breaks down into several areas, and by far the best of these is the combat system. The combat of Data Hacker Reboot is a turn-based tactical affair. So, at the beginning we choose whether we want to actually fight or attempt to run away. Now, running away has a fairly high chance of succeeding, but that does depend on the enemy. So if we choose to engage, we currently have 3 party members who are the group on the right of the screen. Now, from here I can use a basic attack on an enemy of my choice. I could use one of my available techniques. So, for example, I could use this ability, which drains my magic ability in order to increase the amount of TP I have, which is required to use certain techniques. So, for example, I don't currently have enough TP to use the Mercenary Rush attack. I could also use a magic spell, so this character only has the basic magic attack, or a Psi ability, of which he has none. Or I could summon a Guardian Spirit, who would, in this case, target an enemy for double damage. I could also use an item from my inventory, but since they are primarily for healing purposes and things like that, there's no point in doing that at the moment. So, I currently have a Carver Scow, or however you choose to pronounce that, and then 4 Data Alphas. Now, the Data Alphas are the little slug-like things, and they are not particularly dangerous, but they can be a little annoying. The big threat here is the Carver, so it's logical for me to take out the Data Alphas first, so I'll have him target that one. And again, the same basic applies to my second character, who could use one of his available abilities. Or again, in this case, I'm just going to have him use a basic attack on B. We then have our last party member, who is actually a powerful mage, or I am speccing her to be a mage. So she has a number of magic abilities, so I could throw fire, ice, earth, water, or electricity. However, in this case, I'm going to demonstrate a summon. Now, summons are effectively equipped on each particular party member. You'll encounter certain guardian spirits that will allow you to summon them into a battle, though as you can see that uses up 224 mana points and she only has 281, so it's an ability that you can't use, you can't spam it basically. This particular spirit also heals the party, though that probably won't be that necessary at this stage in the fight, so he takes out that. And then she uses that ability, which targets all enemies, so that killed the slugs, and so my thief party member automatically redirected his attack against the one surviving enemy. And that was the end of one round. So we neutralized the enemy's support, and now we can focus primarily on him. Now again, Mercenary Rush is an extremely effective tactic, especially when you're down to a single enemy, because it will hit them 3 times. But again, I don't have enough TP for it, so instead I'm going to use a Feral Chant, which will reduce my mana pool significantly, but will boost my TP. Here I'm going to use the Venom Strike skill. And I am going to have her use her technique Mage's Nap, which restores part of my mana.
Alright.
Maybe this will help.
So that was primarily a restorative round on my part for getting out of bed.
That one hurt.
Now, I am going to demonstrate Tanir's Mercenary Rush ability, even though it is massive overkill given how much health that enemy has left, just because I think it's a good demonstration. And meanwhile, I will have my second character just attack, and I will have my third character throw a fireball. Though, given that Tanir will almost certainly strike first, and this will be fatal, as I said, that was complete overkill. But at a fundamental level, that is the combat of Data Hacker Reboot. I really do like this system. It's got a surprising amount of depth and complexity. It's all about picking off certain targets before they become a threat, and using the most powerful attack as certain enemies are strong or weak to certain things. In particular, I really like the fact that water attacks will actually heal certain plant-based enemies rather than damaging them. It's the kind of intricate detail that is really nice to see. With that said, though, while I do like the battle system, the things that surround it have an awful lot of problems, starting with the world exploration. This is the world of Data Hacker Reboot. Specifically, this is the main town of Victorium, which acts effectively as a hub. So over there, where we just were, there is a teleport pole that basically allows you to travel to different worlds. And that's also where you will always teleport into when you return from those worlds. We can talk to various of these characters if we want. So, for example, this is an estate agent, and if we had a whole bucket load more gold than we do at the moment, we could actually buy this property. But there's no point in doing that at the moment because, as I said, we're kind of broke. The world is relatively straightforward to navigate. And there are certain things that you can hop over if they are one space thick. The town itself is a little annoying to navigate at times, particularly as you often don't really know where you're supposed to be going. You've also noticed those little blue flames hanging around, and I have no idea what their purpose is. If you interact with them, they vanish with no apparent effect. For all I know, it could be a collect them all trophy or something like that. And the jump is a little finicky, because if you notice... No? I can do it from there. Sometimes it will be very finicky and won't let you jump across something that looks like it should be jumpable unless you sidle over one space. So from the town, I'm going to head upwards into this forest up here. And this forest area is a fairly standard area, where you can have a wander around. You may well get attacked by some random monsters. And ultimately, that's kind of it for the world exploration. There's nothing terribly complicated about it, but it is what it is. And fundamentally, this is what it is. The problem here comes down to the fact that the world just isn't that easy to navigate. It's far too easy to get lost or not know where you're meant to be going. And frankly, that's a relatively simple fix. A map would be quite handy. At the same time, you often have no clue what you're actually meant to be doing or where you are meant to be going, so that map wouldn't be helpful. But again, that's a relatively simple fix. All you really need is a quest log, something to keep track of where I'm going and why I'm going there. Unfortunately, that brings us on to by far my least favourite element of the gameplay. The grinding. I have lost count of the sheer number of times that I had this exact same fight against this exact same group of enemies, this group of plants. But in all honesty, it was necessary in order to stand a chance in the next area, or frankly, I would just have got slaughtered. If you don't grind, you don't have a chance of progressing. Some people probably won't have a problem with this, but for me, grinding endlessly against waves and waves of the same enemies just isn't that fun. I'm one of those people who will avoid fights where possible just so I can get further through the story, so I can see what's coming next. And therefore, if you make it possible for me to avoid the enemies, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to end up hideously underleveled, and it will make the game unplayably difficult the further into it I get. Now, I appreciate that's partially my problem, but at the same time, if you're going to make it possible for me to do that, I'm going to do it, because that's the way I prefer to play. Now, all of this makes the gameplay something of a mixed bag. If you don't mind the grinding, you will probably have a lot of fun with a genuinely excellent combat system. But if you're like me and you find grinding incredibly tedious and frustrating, you're going to start getting bored very, very quickly. The story of Data Hacker Reboot really is an odd duck to talk about. Mostly because I don't actually have a clue what was going on. Well, surely that is your own fault for giving up on it without having completed it. Okay, true, but at the same time, you've just not got any context for what you're doing. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. If you want to have part of the game's purpose be unraveling the world, you want the world itself to be a mystery, that's absolutely fine, and you can do interesting things with that. But if you're going to do it, we need something to anchor us, and the logical choice then would be the characters. Unfortunately, for that to be the case, I need to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and I don't. And what exactly is the issue with them? It's just that the game, in a fairly literal sense, actually just sort of drops you in it. You get this brief scene of interaction between a couple of characters, which doesn't explain anything, and then it suddenly cuts over to the main character and his sister, who have, again, a few brief lines of dialogue that don't really explain anything, and then you suddenly find yourself in this city where you're apparently looking for some guardian spirit that's going to help you on your quest if you can talk it into it. The problem is, I have no feel for the personalities of these characters, because they're just never given time to establish those personalities. You seem a little frustrated this week. Are you quite alright? I'm fine, it's just I hate being this down on a project that's clearly a labour of love. In all honesty, it feels like the developers created this really interesting world and then just did a really poor job of conveying everything they'd come up with to the audience. There really isn't that much to say on the story because, frankly, it's so thin on the ground. In my opinion, video game plots always need to answer one basic question. Why? Why? Why are the characters doing what they're doing? Why is their mission important? And Data Hacker Reboot just completely fails to do this. It's also got this weird habit of apparently dropping plot threads, in that it's mentioned that your sister has gone missing while visiting a warehouse. So I logically assumed that my next objective was to go to the warehouse and find her. That's certainly what the characters imply. But instead it appears that I had to travel to a bunch of different worlds and do a thing in each of them, which again is just not explained why I'm doing it. Ultimately, the story of Data Hacker Reboot is just weak. And frankly, that's just disappointing. The graphics for this game are fine. At the end of the day, it's an RPG Maker game, so you know roughly what you're getting into. They're not exactly spectacular, but they achieve exactly what they're setting out to do. With that said, though, can we please have a full screen mode? Maybe it's just me, but I really hate playing games in windowed mode. It just rubs me up the wrong way for no reason that I can really put my finger on. One slightly odd thing I should note, though, is for some reason the frame rate dropped to 30 FPS whenever I was walking around the town, which I'm assuming is something to do with the rain effects, which seems a little odd given that it's not exactly graphically demanding. It's not exactly a major issue, as this game doesn't exactly require a high frame rate, but it is kind of odd. For the most part, I like the art. The character sprites are pretty good, the monster designs are reasonable, and the in-game characters are, again, fine. The art itself really is nothing special, but it's perfectly competent and it achieves what it needs to do, which, at the end of the day, is fine. The music is okay. as often seems to be the case on this show, it's fine, it's just not very memorable. The sound effects, likewise, are completely functional, do exactly what they need to do, but you're not exactly going to be going on about how amazing they were. The voice acting, though, it's limited to little quotes during the battles, and while they're not too bad, they play far too often, and as a result, they are going to start getting very, very annoying. It's not exactly a major problem, but it does add to the frustrations of this game. I'm adding this little section to the review simply because I do like to give credit where it's due. Specifically, while recording the Let's Play series, I encountered a game-breaking bug about 15-20 minutes in that prevented me from progressing any further. A quick search of the Steam forums told me that I wasn't the only one encountering this bug, and I'm very pleased to say that it was fixed within 24 hours. Now, while the bug being there in the first place wasn't exactly a great sign, I do love to see a developer who gets on top of problems quickly and has a good amount of feedback with the community in the forums, so well done there. So, did I enjoy Data Hacker Reboot? No, I'm sorry to say that I did not. Should you buy it? While I maintain that the battle system of this game is truly excellent, it is dragged down by absolutely everything around it to a degree that just makes it not that fun to play. In all honesty, it kind of feels like the developers forgot that they were making this game for other people. You know, they've created this really interesting world, but they don't bother explaining it because they already know everything about it, so it doesn't need repeating. And as a result, this game just has far too many flaws for me to recommend it. If you can honestly get past the issues with the grinding, you may well have some fun with the battle system. But personally, I just found it extremely boring. Now, if you'll excuse me, I frankly need a really, really long sleep. I'll see you later.